Welcome to Frankly Speaking with Sendra D. My name is Sendra Dorcé. This is part 2 of a 2-part interview. We hope that you enjoyed the previous segment.
So this must really hurt your heart, having had a legacy, such a strong legacy of serving this country. Your grandfather, your father, and yourself, investing so much time, effort, and mental health into protecting a country that is right now ready to betray you, because what it's saying that these values that you so loved are not going to be available to you anymore. So
it's worse than that, because a lot of the soldiers that lost their lives in all these wars, they lost it because they were actually pawns of the globalists. They weren't, it wasn't for our freedom. They were fighting for that, but behind it all was a globalist using it for their own agenda, which is twice as bad. And I'm a veteran, and I love the veterans, but we, particularly now, all the wars are all globalist wars. They're not they're not saving our country.
No, it's just, we forgot to mention the military industrial complex, which is part of the deepest state, because, we have defense contractors, we have, Halliburton. When we think about Mr. Cheney, he was the CEO of Halliburton before he became pseudo president of the United States. And all these defense contractors, and still are operating through Washington and making billions of dollars at, and it's interesting. You would think the globalists would really care about the globe, but they don't. It's a very self-interest, self-preserving process.
Well, what motivates Satan and his followers? Greed and power, and glory for themselves, and not freedom for the individual. Now, I'll tell you a little funny story, not a funny story, but about Dick Cheney. He's a globalist, okay? Mm-hmm. And he was part of the Council on Foreign Relations. He was actually one of the directors high up in the organization. Mm-hmm. And there's a video of him talking to the Council on Foreign Relations people, and he's saying, paraphrasing him, he's saying, I'm certainly glad to be back with my people here. He says, as you know, I've been a director of Council of Foreign Relations. He says, of course, I never mentioned that when I was campaigning in Montana. They would never elect me if they knew that. And that, now, I want to say something else. You're talking about the lady in France who should have been in jail.
Christine Lagarde.
Yeah. Well, see, this is one of the modus operandi of the people who are part of the globalists. A lot of them, they don't get in power and become a globalist. It's the other way around. They rise up as long as they're doing the agenda of the globalists will bring them up. Once they start to question, see, most people, 80% of the people who are part of the Council on Foreign Relations don't realize it's part of the globalists. They just think it's something they have to belong to get their career. It's only the top 20% of the people who know the real agenda of the globalists. And so as you go into their ranks from the bottom, you work your way up as long as you are abiding by their agenda. Once you start to question it, boom, you're out. So the ones that rise to the top are not the cream of the crop. They're the ones who've sold their souls as they go along. And now Obama, it was given his first job by Henry Kissinger, who is a globalist, a major globalist. Yes.
So Obama was. Are you talking about the job? Are we talking about President Obama? The presidency was given by Henry Kissinger.
Yeah, he was brought up through the deep state to be president. And Henry Kissinger gave him his first job in Wall Street, and brought him. You see, and so as long as he played the agenda and he was useful, they brought him up. That's why they brought him all the way up to presidency. If you notice, when he ran in state legislature and Congress, he had no opposition. They took care of his opposition, and so he really had no opposition. And then when he ran for president, they put John McCain, who was a nobody. He was a globalist.
Yeah.
See, the problem is in all our elections.
But he's also a deep state actor. I mean, he's so deep state.
He was a globalist.
I'm talking about John McCain. We're talking about John McCain, correct? Yeah.
See what they do is that both candidates, the Democrat and Republican, have all been globalists. So it really didn't matter to them which one won because they were all globalists, except for Ronald Reagan. And Ronald Reagan only
And Donald
won.
Trump.
He took on George Bush, who was a globalist, and so they helped him become president because they couldn't stop him, but they could make it rough for him. So he took on George Bush in order to win the election. But as long as they had their globalist person in there to control the agenda, they were good with that. So Donald Trump
This is fascinating.
That's why they have attacked him so much even before he was elected. Of course, they didn't think he was going to get elected. You know, they thought Hillary was going to do it.
Yes, they did.
That's why they marshaled everything on this massive vote fraud that's going on. Is the globalists trying to take him out because they know if he gets 4 more years, they could have a real. He slowed them down, but he hadn't stopped them.
First of all, I blame the Department of Justice for what is happening today. Today, I tweeted out. You know, I'm not a tweeter, but I happened to go to see what I wanted to see what Mr. Trump was up to, and he tweeted something about where he's thankful for all the support that he's seeing across the country with all rallies and and what you and I have talked about. But he says, "Oh, I may make an appearance," and I just retweeted at Real Donald Trump. I said, "Fire Attorney General Bill Barr," because he knew about the election meddling from the beginning. He knew way before it happened, but he went MIA. So where were you, Mr.
He's
Barr?
part of the deep state. That's why he went MIA.
People were so happy Jeff Sessions is gone. I'm thinking, this man worked for George W. Bush. He was like, George W., I think, officiated his wedding or something, or he was the best man. He was something in his wedding. Or he met his wife, who also worked for George W. Bush. You see the family? It's a big little cluster of people. So this is the man that you want to replace Jeff Sessions to help you out with the Russia investigation. Right. These people are so deeply buried. Of course, I don't want to, clearly I have opinions, and this is another conversation another day, but this is your talk. We want to hear you.
Yeah. Lindsey Graham is part of the deep state also.
Of course he is. Someone said, no, not Lindsey. I said, oh yeah, yes, Lindsey. He said on Hannity, or was it Tucker, I will donate $500,000 to the president's defense fund. No, what I'd like you to do, Mr. Graham, is to write a confession that you knew that the Russia investigation was a hoax. That's all we want from you. We don't want 500,000. We want a confession that you were in on it. That would satisfy me. But anyway.
They all talk a good game, but so we haven't had any indictments or anything come down.
Nothing. Durham, and I said it. That's why I said to the Republican Party group here, I said, they're like, oh, just wait, August. And I said, really? I was like, you people are buying that? You know what? I stopped watching Fox News. I said, I went about my life. I said, you know what? If I get one thing out of this, is that Donald Trump taught me that with focus, you can achieve anything. So let me take his example and utilize that for good, because everything else around him was, to me, a coup. It was set him up. They had plan A, plan B, plan C, and being from Haiti, I know what coups look like because we've had a few of them. And so some of them, I'm sure my father was a part of it, but up close, you're looking at it. And the thing is, it boggles my mind to say, how do people not see through that? How do people not see that this man is being smeared as, anyway, this is not, again, you all know.
Side note about Donald Trump, his father was a member of the John Birch Society.
Was he?
Yes, he was, Fred Trump. And so Donald Trump is aware of some of this stuff, but he doesn't know enough to be able to spot for sure who is a deep stater and who is not. He had Steve Bannon, who was a nationalist.
That's exactly what I was going to say. Steve Bannon was his litmus test, but they smeared him and got him out. They got rid of all of them. They locked them all. Didn't you see them trying to lock up Steve Bannon again?
Yeah, and Mike Flynn was a key person who could have uncovered a lot of the stuff Obama was doing because he was part of the intelligence community.
Absolutely.
Under Obama. And that's why they took him out, because he was a danger. He was going to expose a lot of stuff.
He
Uh,
was a free thinker and a truth teller. He's speaking
so
power, speaking truth to power. And
if
they can't have that.
if the deep state cannot control you through either money or they this is part of the Jeffrey Epstein
Yeah,
saga.
the cabal, that whole and
They
as I said, it's part of Mossad and it's all intertwined. You know,
well,
you
used
can't
them to
talk about
bring,
one without talking about the other. And we don't
they,
let's not forget Hollywood and how they are trying to brainwash us into, what we're seeing and what we need to believe.
well, now Jeffrey Epstein was used by the deep state to bring all these politicians in and for sexual perversion, and then they could hold it as blackmail over them to make them do what they wanted them to do, or else they would expose them. You see, and that's what Jeffrey Epstein was all about.
I
Was
know, until he served his purpose, and then it has the fingerprints of the intel community all over it. So
yeah,
we're back. We're still in. We're getting so going everywhere. But I want to talk about the deep state and what it is, and I want to say, thank you so much. I'm speaking with Frank Hunt, who is a constitutional expert. We'll get to the Constitution at some point in this conversation. I think we talked a little bit about it, but this is so
yeah,
fascinating how, as an average human, and I'm so grateful that I had the courage to step aside. I had to get out of my own community because everybody's still thinking group think. I was, when my father passed on, I had to examine every aspect of my life. And I was living in Miami, where I'm still part of a group. There's a large Haitian community there. And I said, I had to go. So I moved to England in 2004. I moved to London. And that's when my awakening happened. I started
right.
thinking outside the box. I started looking at the United States from a different perspective. And I was meeting people in a religious community that said, how do you Americans think this way? How do you not stop these wars? And that would make me think deeply. And they would say things, there are no two parties in the US. There's just one big happy family. They're all in it together. And I started really thinking about these things. And
Yeah.
it was very helpful because it gave it my neural pathways were completely rewired. It was as though someone else's brain was there was a transplant. And I'm grateful because now I can look at things and say, they're at it again, trying to convince me of their truth when I know that's not the truth. So you and I agreed on one thing, which was we're not for party necessarily, we're patriotic, right? That's one of the things we want to make sure that people understand. This is not a Republican conversation. No, this is a Democratic conversation, a libertarian. We are patriotic because what we're talking about, the deep state, is a phenomenon that potentially can be to the detriment, can exist. First of all, it cannot coexist with the ideas that this country was established on. So
Right.
talk to me a little bit about that and how it conflicts with the Constitution.
Um, well, the Constitution, what they've managed to do is both sides of the political spectrum, the Democrats, Republicans, and our form of government have all been basically corrupted by the deep state. The ones who are at the top rung, most of them have been bought and sold by the deep state, and so they're under their control. Even our Supreme Court justices are the same thing. John Roberts,
Wait. Really?
yes, John Roberts is
Oh,
under
yeah.
their. That's why he voted for Obamacare, because he was going to vote against it, which would have killed it. And the deep state got a hold of him and said, remember this, this, and this. So he changed his vote. And I don't know if you ever read his opinion that he wrote on Obamacare,
No.
but I went and read his opinion. And the first half of the opinion, he's talking about how the Obamacare is unconstitutional, which we all knew it was. But then the second half of his opinion, he starts doing this real legal gymnastics where he turns it around to say it's a tax. So now a tax is legal. And with Obama's lawyers, when they came to argue in front of the Supreme Court, they were arguing it's not a tax. It's not a tax because they, And so he ended up, he did some really twisted because he had to vote for it. The deep state wanted it in there, as part of the thing. So anyway,
So no, this is also fascinating. So on the topic of Supreme Court, do you think Mr. Kavanaugh, Justice Kavanaugh, is compromised as well? I worry about him.
he's part of the deep state.
Yes, because he worked for Bush as well. I think he was appointed by Bush. You can't escape these people.
And this is one of the problems that Trump has because he doesn't know enough about who is who. And so, and a lot of people surrounding him, in fact, give him advice. And so he puts Brett Kavanaugh on, who is part of the deep state, which he'll do conservative until they get to that crucial vote where the deep state apply the pressure, and he'll do like John Roberts did and vote the other way.
So interesting.
I want to mention something about the USMCA because Robert Lighthizer was the trade representative for Trump that negotiated USMCA. Well, he happens to be a globalist, you see. And so the USMCA is exactly even more than the NAFTA to our detriment. But Trump didn't know that. He didn't have any good
advisors
on the team. So all he does is has to take their word for it. And and now, and that also for the fact that, how much that Pelosi and them tried to keep Donald Trump from having any victories. But why would they vote?
She's tried so hard.
But why would they vote for the USMCA and give him that victory?
Because they put their own, they incorporated their own agendas in there. But I want to point out this too. Also, he's surrounded by Ivanka and Jared, who are supposed to be protecting him, but they're, I think they're globalists as well, to be honest.
Well, they're liberals and nothing else. I don't know.
Because I did see, because Jared Kushner attended the Bilderberg meeting, I think a year or 2 years ago.
I wish he'd get rid of them.
I say get rid of all of them. So I'm gonna tweet out everybody he should fire. Today was Bill Barr. I said fire him because we would not be here if this is Mr. Barr, because he knew how Jeff Sessions had dropped the ball. And Jeff Sessions is, I don't know what to say other than the fact that he's a coward. And I'll give him a pass. And the fact he just got scared. He was just so afraid that these people. He looked nervous when Kamala Harris was questioning him. He was like, "Ma'am, what are you trying to say? Oh my goodness, what is going on? Are you a senator or not?" So
they threatened him.
Not fit for the job.
They threatened him with sending him to jail for some things he had done. And so they had his control. That's why he had to take himself out. And
he should have taken himself out of the job, not just the one gig, but the whole job. But these people want power so much. Apparently, he had worked his whole career to get to that point. But and then Mr. Sessions, I have to give it to him. Then he ran for Senate again. I mean, it's like they just get up and brush themselves off, and they're like back on the road again. But had Steve Bannon stayed there, that would be a different conversation. He is still fighting. Even though the president fired him, talk about dedication and commitment, because he understands what's at stake here. This is a nationalist. And, the word nationalist has been smeared as though it's white nationalist. So I tell people, look at me. I'm a nationalist. So what does that say about me? So nationalist, it's economic independence. And one of the main points of the Trump agenda was economic freedom for the United States of America. America first, MAGA, was about economic independence, energy independence, and economic independence. And that's really Steve Bannon's talking point, because it flows so naturally for him. He talks about his working class background. And so can you tell, I like the guy. Besides all, they talk about sloppy this and stuff like that, he has the mind that I want. They say, let the mind be in you that was also in Christ Jesus. I was like, let the mind that is in Steve Bannon be in me as well. But we know it's all God, because he's a believer, So talk to me a little bit more about how the deep state, we know what they are. We've exposed them. We've defined them. We know, it's the media, it's Wall Street, it's the billionaire or trillionaire family, Rockefeller, the Rothschilds. We've talked, and we haven't talked about Silicon Valley. What's their part in all of this?
Well,
And free speech.
they're controlled by the deep state. They're controlled by the globalists. Amazon and Zuckerberg and all that stuff wouldn't be where they're at if it wasn't for our government helping them out, and to the tune of millions of dollars, because they are going to do what the deep state wants them to do. That's why they were helped to be able to be so big. The Amazon under Obama was given millions and millions of dollars through free postage. So they started their Amazon Prime, where they could deliver overnight almost. Well, it didn't cost them anything to do that. So they received free postage in the tune of millions and millions of dollars, which helped Amazon explode and become big, because they knew that these people were deep staters and would toe the line in the agenda. Same as Zuckerberg.
I think Amazon, knows who I am because they canceled my credit card with them. I hadn't used the card because I refused to. I was boycotting them. I stopped going to Whole Foods. Anything they touched, their tentacles, I was like, I'm out. And the credit card was not being used. They sent me a letter saying, based on our, our review of your account, we have decided to close your account. But I haven't even used your card. I don't owe you any money. It's zero. Why are you closing my card? But anyway, I smiled because I was like, they have all sorts of spyware. They're probably seeing what I watch. But so I want to ask, with all these perks that these tech companies have been receiving from the government, what's in it for the government? What is in it? I mean, what did Obama get from this, from giving free postage? And, while he did get a Netflix deal, I don't know, since,
It's part of the crony capitalism under which was always been there for all the presidents, most of them, because what they do by helping, let's say Amazon become really big and worth millions and millions of dollars, well, they're going to be helping them financially with their elections. That money comes back to the government, to the candidates, because those people are able to give millions of dollars to their campaigns.
Yes. Yes. That's interesting. It's interesting because Donald Trump ran on small donations, and I heard Mitch McConnell say something the other day, how he's sort of transformed his campaign strategies into sort of a more grassroots. They're following the Trump model, because Donald Trump was counting the average size, donation is like between $25 and $60. Mitch McConnell says we need to adopt that more into the Republican Party, because these people were going after big lobbyists and big special interest groups to run their, to fund their campaigns. And now with this new model, Donald Trump has ruined it for everyone now. Okay, so that's part of, that's the one strategy to drain the swamp. He hasn't been able to drain the swamp. Please drain the swamp, Mr. President. You have next 4 years to drain the swamp. Yes, and I said it. He has 4 more years to drain the swamp. But we are concerned because these people, in all the deep state too, the lobbyists are involved. We have the pharmaceutical. Let's talk about that. That's another part of the deep state.
Let me go back to big tech. You were asking what was in it for the government with big tech making them big. Well, we saw it in this election, because they came so big that they're controlling 95% of the information going out, and so they hid the Hunter Biden stuff. They took down all the conservatives, so that the government got their influence and their power to basically censor conservatives, and that's how the government got their return.
And they censored the president of the United States on election day. They blocked his account. They have blocked the press secretary. It is called press secretary for a reason, to provide information.
Now, here's one of the things about the big tech, though. See, under Obama, the big tech was given immunity from being sued by people for what they did. and they're protected by the First Amendment. Excuse me. But so they're given legislation that's been passed in their favor to protect them from lawsuits, et cetera, which other companies don't get. Other news outlets, like the conservatives, don't get that. And so that's how they help big tech. Is now what we should do is cancel all the immunity laws and make them susceptible to that they don't have a free hand to just do whatever they want to. If they're going to be free from immunity, they have to be responsible to the public.
So what I understand as far as some of these companies, Facebook, the Twitters, what the YouTubes, and all these companies that put out content, is that because they're under the the rules, their regulations, they are not considered publishing companies, whereas a newspaper is subject to certain penalties. So it's very clear and simple. Turn them into publishing companies. If they are censoring, if they are selecting content, that's publishing. Facebook, I was running the Seminole County debates, and I was trying to promote the debates online. They shut me down. They said, no political ads. This is not a political ad. Yeah. I'm promoting a debate. They said no.
They shouldn't be able to have their cake and eat it too, and that's what's going on.
No, they shouldn't. No, they should not at all. So
if they don't want any problems, and they get rid of these laws that protect them, and then we'll see what happens then.
I listened to, I was listening to, I think it was a month or 2 months, maybe 2 months before the election, President Trump was giving an interview to Laura Ingraham, and he was talking about the evil people, these people, he said, I love the way he talks. People don't like it, I like it. He's like, they're evil people. He goes, some of them you know, some of them you don't know, but just so you know, they're evil, bad people, bad people, bad people. And I was smiling because, in his sort of like coded language, you can kind of discern he knows more than he's able to say. And but so what we've been talking about is exactly what he was alluding to, correct?
Right.
Did you see that interview with Laura?
No, I didn't. I haven't watched Fox News in a long time now.
Yes, I'm dwindling away. It was Laura, and then Hannity I gave up a long time ago after the Russia hoax.
I think Breitbart News. Are you familiar with Breitbart News?
Oh, I love Breitbart. Yes, of course. They're pretty much the only ones accurately covering the election. How can I say, lawsuits? And they're going on the ground and interviewing people because they want you to think that no one cares about the election. They think that we have elected someone, but there are actually a lot of protests happening around the country or in those cities. So it's Breitbart News that's bringing the information out.
It's amazing how I think the mayor of Seattle, when all the Antifa were rioting, they didn't want to bring out the cops or the National Guard. But as soon as the election is over and some of the patriots get out in the street protesting, all of a sudden she figures out she has a National Guard, that she can go out and get law and order again.
And not only that, it's all of a sudden COVID comes back, right? COVID is back. So you can't congregate. Do you know that they passed a law in England that two or more people cannot gather in a street? That's against some kind of, I don't know, it's under the COVID thing. They just don't want protests. I never thought I would see the UK doing this. But let's tie this, now that we talk about COVID, let's talk about this big pharmaceutical conspiracy. Donald Trump has said that he is advocating for these pharmaceuticals to cut their prices. So the deep state pharmaceuticals are saying that's not going to happen. So we're going to be part of this conspiracy. Isn't it interesting that we just found a cure 1 week after President-elect has announced? And so we have a cure. I wonder, I'm sorry, forgive me if I don't just believe that it just appeared, but I did lose, my cousin passed on, not from COVID, but complications. So I've got to say, shame on you, pharmaceutical companies, for keeping this from the public if you had this all along. But I'll give you the benefit of the doubt because I believe you're humans And I believe that you would not want to harm another fellow human. So I'll
Right.
just
Exactly. Along those lines, remember Trump was touting hydroxychloroquine to use, and it's
yes.
like $5 a pill or whatever it is, $5 a throw. Where all of a sudden Dr. Fauci, who's part of the WHO and part of the Chinese connection,
Hmm.
and the pharmaceuticals, all of a sudden says that's not any good, but use this remdesivir, which is like $1,000 to throw. Just use the expensive one. The cheap one doesn't work. And that was their.
No. And they're all in on it, the vaccine, the pills, whatever, the medication, the prevention, the somebody's was in charge of the distribution of this COVID, and somebody's in charge of the vaccination once you got it, and then not the vaccination, I'm sorry, the pills to help, but the
I have
vaccination
a
to prevent it.
chart.
It's all one big cabal.
Yes, I have a chart that I took off the internet that showed the connection between China, the WHO, Dr. Fauci, and all these other. They're all connected together.
Let's
So
not forget Mr. Gates.
yeah, well, he's at the top of the list.
Yeah, let's not forget him. He
Right.
has, I think he has like a disconnection with his emotions, because as he's giving us bad news, he's always like got this smile on his face, like, "Ooh, I plotted and I got it,"
That's
And
that's
so,
the money smile.
yeah, it's like twinkle in his eye kind of smile, like, "Oh, you sheep people, I'm telling you something and you're believing in it, but it's not the truth." But
But
anyway, so
people wonder why all these big tech and Gates and all these other people have all this money are all liberals, turn out to be liberals.
you gotta wonder about that. Warren Buffett, though, I question, because I like Warren Buffett.
Well,
I mean, I don't think
you have a few anomalies that are not part of, like Donald Trump. Okay, he's
right.
at the, but most of them are because the deep state has helped them get where they're at
Is that
because
what
they
that
know
is?
that they can count on them later on. Because if Bill Gates ever stopped doing what he's doing, all of a sudden he'd be a pauper overnight almost if the deep state decided to go after him.
That's interesting. I escaped the deep state because after I finished my graduate work at Nova in conflict analysis and resolution and peacekeeping, one of my classmates was in the military, and she referred me. She had her recruiting officer in the Navy. Yeah, contact me. And I started filling out the paperwork because I was like, I just need a job and negotiations or whatever. And I was in banking at the time. And so I started processing. It would have been for Navy intelligence. And so I prayed and I prayed and I was like, I don't think this is gonna work for me, because the process is very long. So I had a lot of time. I think I was in like 6 months, maybe
Yeah.
3 months in the process. And I was like, doesn't feel right to me. And I'm so glad. Can you imagine this mouth and a uniform? And they court-martialed me so fast. Get out of here.
Well, there's some of us that have some problems with that authority.
Yeah, my daddy, if I could not, if he couldn't handle me, there is no way I would have been subservient to anyone else. But it's interesting because that was the sort of the launching pad for me, the launching place for me to start really wanting to be outside the sort of mainstream, the outside the box, if you want, because
Right.
that's when I moved, because this was in 2002, 1 or 2, and I moved to the UK in 2003, and I
Right.
wanted nothing else to do with the government. And so that said, so we've talked about every component of this. Have we left anyone out? So we can, before we move on to any of the topics, have we, in the deep state, we've talked about Hollywood, we've talked about Wall Street, we talked about the media, we've talked about Silicon Valley, we talked about the global, the ones we don't see, the families, the Rockefellers, Rothschilds, and who else? Oh, in the intelligence community, in the pharmaceuticals. And so who else have we left out?
Well, you got our universities
Oh,
that
yes.
have
Yes.
infiltrated and that's one of our biggest problems, because now we have all these young people coming out who have been brainwashed. Even when I went through college many, many years ago, I won't say, it's been a long time.
Yesterday.
But I came out as a flaming liberal like everybody else does. After I've been out a few years and got introduced to religion and stuff, that I made the 180, but most people don't do that. And so we have all these young people coming out who have been deceived and have not been given the right information. So now they're the voting people. And another thing to think about all these young people, it's not their fault. They haven't been taught right. But a lot of them grew up under Obama. You know, when Obama took over in 2009, you know, a lot of them were in high school or junior high school, and then they get through college while he was president. So all they knew was Obama and liberals and socialism, and we can do whatever we want to do, and nobody's going to do anything with no accountability. So when Donald Trump comes in, that was like hitting the brick wall. All of a sudden, hey, what happened? You know, my world just left.
Indeed. You know, it's
So,
interesting because Bernie was benefited from Obama's, run as well, because Bernie was like Obama on steroids, because
yeah,
free everything. And that's what the appeal is. Because you get out of college, you're tired. You're always like, oh, I could party a little bit more. I think, if the government's telling me they're going to give me free money, they're going to pay off my student loans, everything, let everybody in, let's open the borders, and yeah, this sounds like a good idea to me. Oh, and don't forget the universal basic income, where we give everybody, citizen or non-citizen, $10,000. So I always say, who's paying for that? Really? Let's talk about that. And and they're like, oh, well, you grew up. But the point is, the conversation needs to be very transparent and clear. Don't give them half of the story. You need to give them the whole story. You see how
right.
Elizabeth Warren, during the primaries, Elizabeth Warren, Bernie Sanders, they would be asked, how are you going to pay for that? Andrew Yang, how are you going to pay for that? They would like fumble, and once in a while you'll hear Bernie say, well, of course, your taxes are going to go up. But you can't fast track that answer. You need to be clear. You need to say, if we raise your taxes, we can give you these benefits. That's
Yeah,
it. That's a simple equation. So the universities, you've probably seen it with your children as well. You have 7.
yeah, yeah. And unfortunately, some of them probably voted for Obama and Biden. I don't know where
Biden is, I'll take Obama, because I actually voted for Obama the first term because I was boycotting the Republican Party after the Iraqi war. And then this man, Obama, took us to more wars than George W. Bush. That Iraqi war in 2003 is what took me out of the Republican Party. I didn't vote in 2004 because that's when I moved to England. Actually, my move to England was boycotting the election. So
yeah,
when Obama came along, I was like, oh my God, he didn't vote for the Iraqi war. Remember, he said no. And this man, he fooled us. I said, you fool me once, you can't fool me twice. I'm going libertarian, for people who really believe in peace. So Obama couldn't understand why we didn't want Hillary, because she kind of groomed him into these wars. So it was
yeah.
more the Hillary agenda than the Obama agenda. It was clear that it was a continuation of the Clinton year.
No, it was a globalist agenda, not
So you think
Hillary.
that they are just
Hillary,
puppets, all of them? They're all puppets of the globalists.
they're all puppets, right? Exactly. And as
So
long as they do what they're supposed to do, they'll keep rising. You know.
this is sad. So we're gonna get into the solution a little bit. So we talk about the Constitution. Some of these things that we talked about, can we tie them into the Constitution now and see? Because that's where the solution is. The Constitution of the United States. That's what's keeping us sovereign, right? So
Well,
these globalists want to give power to other countries like China and wherever else they're based over the
mhm.
United States. Talk to me about how to put a plug into this momentum that they are building.
Well, the only solution is to educate people on the deep state, the globalists, and their agenda, so that people can recognize this and vote against those politicians who are not going to uphold the Constitution. And they have to know the Constitution first. Now, the Constitution is actually not a form of government. I don't know if you knew that or not. It's not based on a form of government. It's just based on the principles. And it's based
Yes,
on a principle of man's nature never changes. There's always greed. And so the
yes,
checks and balances was brought in to check each other's greed. You
right.
know, the Congress going to check the president because they don't want him to be more powerful. The president's going to check them. The court's going to check them, and that type of thing. So it's basically checks and balances. Unfortunately, right now, most of the people in those top layers of those all three branches have been corrupted and controlled by the globalists. So our checks and balances are not working like they're supposed to. And one example of that is Roe v. Wade, which should not have been the federal government. The federal government was never intended to be all powerful like it is now. It was only supposed to take care of treaties, wars, and protect the citizens, and that's it. That's the only purpose of government, is to protect our rights from being taken away by somebody else. All this other stuff, 90% of what our government does, federal government, is not authorized by the Constitution. The states are supposed to have the power, and the people are supposed to have power. It's supposed to go from the people up, not from the federal government down.
Right.
It's directly opposite of what it should be. So go back to how the Constitution would work. In Roe v. Wade, the checks on the court is that the legislature can mandate what the court can rule on or not rule on. That's the checks on the court. The court is not supposed to be unlimited in power, because the legislature is supposed to say, you cannot decide the issue of Roe v. Wade because that's not part of the Constitution, and you're only supposed to look at constitutional issues, not social issues. And that should be left to the states. Each state should decide on their own what they want to do with abortion. And that way, if New York wants to have abortions and the people in New York decide, that's fine. But if I don't want to be in that state, then I can move to Florida or Texas, someplace, But by making it, and the Supreme Court is not the law of the land. It's only an appellate court. It's the last court for an appellate. And it's only supposed to be for that one issue. It's not supposed to be taken as the law of the land. Unfortunately, our lawyers and our legal system has been so perverted by Justice Earl Warren liberal court in the 1950s, put in by Eisenhower, was one of our biggest traitors, in case you want to know. Eisenhower was what he appeared to be at all. That's a whole nother story. But anyway, so the liberal Earl Warren court set all these precedents up, and so now our lawyers look at precedent and instead of looking at the Constitution and going back to the original. Because what does it say that some judge who made a ruling was correct, and you're going to use that as your guidepost, instead of the Constitution? And that's why our legal system is so messed up now, is that there's so much unconstitutional precedent set. It's kind of like, you tell somebody a story, and then you tell somebody, and that person tells somebody, and
it becomes diluted.
By the time it gets to around 10th time, it comes back to you, you don't even recognize it. And that's what we got right now in our legal system. And that's why our Supreme Court most of the time is not following the Constitution.
So, Amy Coney Barrett, you think that her new appointment to the Supreme Court, that should help, correct? She's a constitutionalist.
Well, I think so. I don't know that much about her. I mean, I haven't studied her totally. I mean, it's unfortunate they had to do that you have to go by sex, well, we got to have another woman in there.
Well, isn't that how they chose the vice presidents as well?
Yeah.
Sex, it's all identity now. Well, we have 100 identities to choose from, so let's see where that goes.
Yeah. Now, I think she'll probably be good, and she's definitely going to be on the conservative side. Now, whether the globalists have anything on her to control her or not, I don't know. Hopefully not, but they get into a lot of stuff, so we'll see.
Indeed. So, I went on the point of selecting people, playing the identity card. Let's just appoint one of everything and just be done with that, and then we can get back to the issues, because we get so distracted with these issues because we're so focused on race, religion, and this. Let's just do one of each. Let's just do one of each and just rotate one of this, one of that, and then we can say, okay, now we can focus on what really matters. And
Right.
so, on that topic, and as far as the Constitution, being the saving grace of the United States, do you think it's even sustainable? Because, it's been amended before. We talked about earlier in the conversation how they appointed, how senators were appointed. So that was a significant amendment.
Yeah.
If, first of all, if Joe Biden wins, we may never see that another Republican. He must have really deep, 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 deep state roots for another Republican to win. So, but I want to point that the Democratic agenda is a little bit more radical when it comes to making changes to the Constitution. So, how far can this stretch it?
Well, uh, it's hard to say at this point because the AOC and all the far right, the far left radicals are very upset because um, all the Democrats who lost in the state houses and all this stuff are saying that your agenda, your new Green Deal, and all that defund the police cost us our seats, and
Yes,
so
thank
uh,
God.
that's where the people have the power to sway it a little bit back away from the cliff a little bit. And so the Democrats are going to be fighting among themselves for the next 4 years if Biden gets in
See how
because
that puts a smile on my face?
they're going to they're fighting the establishment just like we with the Tea Party we fought the establishment. The only
Hmm.
difference was that the establishment was liberal in the Republican Party as opposed to conservatives who followed the Constitution. The problem with
Sure.
the Democrats, the ones who are fighting the establishment, they are going to the left. So they're way out in left field to fight in the establishment.
Yes,
They
they
have no
are.
place to go. You know,
Absolutely not. And one of the things, Frank, they want to do is abolish the electoral college. Can we talk about that a bit more?
we can. Um, it would take a constitutional amendment to do that. Now they're trying to bypass the Constitution by having states declare that we're just going to give all the points to the one who made the national election, the total whoever won the national uh, election. I'm sorry, the one who got the most votes nationally. We're going to put our electors to that state, and that would bypass the
Right.
electoral college. But that's not going to work because people will take it to the Supreme Court and they'll lose. So it would take a constitutional amendment, which is not going to happen. And I think with all this fraud that they're doing in this election, they've once again overplayed their hand because I hope that we will, no matter who is president, even if it's Donald Trump, we need to expose all the fraud that happened
Expose
in
them
this
all. Expose them all. Let it all be out there.
exactly,
The
and then
cons-
that will put to rest a lot of this thing that there's no fraud, and will show who really won the election. Even if Biden is still president, they'll make him a very illegitimate president.
but the thing is, the concern, and we can tie this into this mainstream media. If Biden gets elected, he will empower the media even more. There will be no one to call them out. At least at some point, Donald Trump says fake news, and so to question everything. But if Biden is in it to gaslight you as well, my goodness. And if they are giving big tech, Google,
That's
YouTube,
where,
Facebook, Twitter,
that's where,
censorship, right?
yeah. What we have to do to combat this is what the John Birch Society has been doing, is to educate people, your neighbor, on what's going on. And then as people get more educated and expose the deep state and the globalists and what they're actually doing, then it's going to make it harder and harder for them to do their agenda. And that's what we need to do. And a lot of the, under Trump, because of his policies, the black minorities came up financially, and
More
were
of
helped.
it increased. He increased by 9 million votes from blacks, apparently.
Yeah, and they recognize that because everybody recognizes good economic times. So if Biden does become president, we can still put together our coalitions and educate people, um, and just increase our base to incorporate a lot of people, and the next 4 years will be quite different. We'll be ready for it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. But we are godly people. We will not go away so quiet, so easily. We may be quiet, but we won't go away. And so this is we're fighting, we're patriots. I'm a nationalist. I believe in this country. I left my adopted country, not by force, I have to say. It wasn't that much of a struggle to come to the US. My father was a diplomat, so I don't want to mislead anyone into thinking that I was running from something. But I've come to appreciate this country and the values that it represents. And even more so, I mean, I am not the crowd type. And I've been to one of Donald Trump's rallies where they're chanting USA. If you didn't love the USA, by the time you finished, you would have fallen in love. And that's what happened to me last year when he was he was launching his campaign, and he came to Orlando. My first and only campaign rally that I attended. But I was proud to be part of that. And it takes a lot to convince me to be part of anything, because I'm like the rebel on the outside. But at that point, that Donald Trump spoke so passionately about his love for this country, and to be among a group of Americans or non-Americans who were there in unison, united, just knowing that we were all for the United States of America, it was a powerful experience for me. So I want to take, we talked about
was that the Orlando rally where he kicked off his campaign?
Yes, I was there. I even have put
There
pictures.
too. I didn't see you.
Oh, you did not. I was with my friend. She was like, "Come on, let's go." And I stood. I will never stand in line for anything again. My days of standing in line for concerts, for clubs, for anything are gone. So I did it once for President Trump. I stood in line for 3 hours. That will never happen again. Red carpet all the way. So President Trump, if you want to see me, send me your car, the Beast, to come pick me up
I have
to make up for those 3 hours. So it rained. I got wet, but it was fun.
Yeah, my wife and I were standing in that line outside for that rally too, to get in.
Really?
Yes,
it was so
we
fun.
were there. I didn't see you, but I was there. But
I was there. People were hating, but I was there. There are people hating.
Before we went to the rally, we had gone to Costco and bought 2 hot dogs to take with us in case we got hungry. And so we're standing in line for several hours, and this guy's going like, "Oh, I wish I had a Coke. I'm so hungry. I wish I had a hot dog." My wife whips it out of her purse. He goes, "My gosh, you got everything." But
you know what?
It was an experience being around people who had love for each other and the country.
Absolutely. And love God and country. God and country. This is not about Donald Trump. People was like, "Oh, I don't march. I don't stand in line for anyone." But I said, this represents God for me, in the sense that it's an idea that is based on, on the God principle. United together we stand. So I want to, we've been talking, and I only wanted to do this for a little bit. So we're going to have to break this up in 2 parts and do a part 1 and part 2. And hopefully we can get much into the final bit of it. And so I want to just say thank you for everything that we've shared today. I want to give you an opportunity to give final words of what you want to let the audience know about what we just talked about, if you want to summarize.
Well, what we need to do now, no matter who wins the presidency, is we need to do our homework and research and learn about the globalists and the deep state and their agenda, and teach our neighbors also, so that we can be informed, fully informed, for the next election.
Indeed, indeed. So, Frank, if someone is looking for you, how can they reach you?
Well, I would. I have a. Let me see. My email is wtpc at Reagan.com. It's WTPC means We the People Coalition at Reagan, REAGAN.com. They can email me there, and I can be in touch with them.
Okay. And so You can also reach me, and I will be happy to put you in touch with Frank. He would love to come and speak at your organization and educate you on this little, idea called the Constitution.
Right.
And so it's a fascinating read, and I read it. I'm reading it slowly, and I'm savoring it. So I want to say again, Mr. Frank Hunt, thank you so much for gracing us with your presence here on the Frankly Speaking with Sendra D show. We appreciate you taking the time, and hopefully we can continue this conversation another time. So please come back.
Thank you. I look forward to it.
Okay, perfect. Well, thank you so much. Please like, subscribe, and comment below. And of course, you know that we are on Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn. And so, of course, YouTube is hosted on Sendor TV. Please share the video and let me know what you think. And I'll see you next time.
Thanks for joining us for another episode of Frankly Speaking with Sendra D on Sendor TV. Please subscribe to the channel so that you can be notified when a new episode is uploaded. Also follow us on Instagram and on Facebook, and we definitely appreciate you being part of this community. Pray for humanity.